What's going on, boys and girls? This is BBD with BBD TV, the biggest Tennessee Volunteers fan on YouTube. And you're watching the two Irish brothers. Shout out to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Go Vols!
How's it going, everyone? I am ND Sean 45.
I'm Irish Benjamin 57.
And together we make up the two Irish brothers. And to start this video off, Ben and I have a little message that we want to send out to Florida State Seminole Nation. Our prayers and thoughts go out to legendary head coach Bobby Bowden and his family. Obviously, as we all just found out yesterday, Bobby Bowden, at the age of 92, has a terminal illness, and it just, at any age, that doesn't sound good.
Right.
So just, but the good thing is, it sounds like Coach Bowden is at peace with where he's at in his life, and really, we wish him nothing but the best. I mean, this is where football rivalries get put to the side.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So moving forward with that, Ben, let's dive right into the biggest topic that everybody is talking about that has broke in the past 24 hours, and that is the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners have reached out to the SEC about joining that conference. That, to me, kind of, to some degree, really came out of nowhere. And I say to some degree because, well, for starters, Texas for the past 10 years has kind of, flirted with making certain moves and like going independent and whatnot. But honestly, I don't know what to think of this. Quite frankly, I am kind of getting sick of this kind of stuff, and I wish teams would just stay put.
Yeah. I mean, the Big 12 has kind of lost its luster, if you will. I mean, losing Nebraska and Colorado didn't help. Losing Mizzou and A&M didn't help either. So when you lose four teams, you got to replace them, and they did replace them. They added TCU, they added West Virginia, but TCU has been good. They've been a very good team, in the Big 12. They've competed for multiple championships in the Big 12 and all that. But West Virginia has kind of been on the downtrend. So I think, Oklahoma and Texas are I think putting more of the Big 12's feet to the fire than really wanting to legit break away from the Big 12. That's how I feel.
So do you think that they're just kind of trying to, I mean, obviously they're trying to send a message, but what do you think that message is? I mean, we're just going to break away unless you do what? What is that? If that makes sense?
Yeah. What's the end game? I mean, yeah, I don't know what the end game is. I mean, Oklahoma has pretty much owned that conference for the last, I'd say, 10 years. So I think they're kind of like, okay, we know we're a lock for the title game. What else do you want from us? And Texas has had a couple of years where they've made noise and they've gotten really close and just haven't been able to get over that hump. Now, there's a power switch in Texas. They're getting Steve Sarkisian. I think Sarkisian could definitely put them over the top. He wasn't given a fair shake at Southern Cal, and that was a huge missed opportunity in my opinion. But I don't know. It's crazy.
And he also did seem to rebound with his coaching career when he was at Alabama.
Yeah,
because he was the offensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he comes over via Alabama to the Longhorns. But
that's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more just if you were to join the SEC, you have more exposure, I guess, is the word to look for. You got the juggernaut that is Alabama. that's been a juggernaut for the last decade and a half.
Ever since Saban took over. I mean, let's just say it.
So I mean, they're always the focal point of the SEC. Florida has been up and down, but Florida seems to always be pretty much that steady, SEC East team. So I don't know. The thing that does bother me is there are a lot of people that are saying that Oklahoma and Texas couldn't survive in the SEC. And that's what kind of bothers me, because I mean, we're Notre Dame fans and we hear it all the time. Well, if Notre Dame joined the Big Ten, they wouldn't be able to handle it, or if they joined an actual conference, they wouldn't be able to handle it. When in actuality, last 10 years, Notre Dame has a winning record against the Big Ten, and last year only lost one ACC conference game when in the ACC conference. And the same goes with Oklahoma and Texas. All time historically, Texas is 94-40. Against SEC teams. So that is literally 54 games above 500 for Texas, and Oklahoma is 24-12. So that's 12 games over 500 for Oklahoma. So I mean, these are two teams that have had their way with the SEC.
It's funny. It's funny you read those numbers, and I would have thought that Oklahoma would have had more games against the SEC in all this time. Apparently not. But
yeah, what really helps Texas, actually, which I found mind-boggling, is Texas has played Arkansas 78 times.
Well, I'm not shocked by that, because
so Texas was 56-22 against Arkansas.
well, see,
that's a lot of games against one.
Yeah.
Team.
That's not surprising, because Arkansas used to be in the same conference together. Yeah. They were in the what was it, the Southwest Conference, or
something like that.
The Big Eight.
Yeah, and I did exclude Mizzou and A&M. Since I mean they haven't been in the SEC for very long. I excluded them. So the records could go up. I mean, Oklahoma's record would go up significantly because they played Mizzou pretty much every year for decades. In the Big 12. So, right. I mean, their number would go up, and same with A&M. I mean, they played A&M a bunch too. So, but still, I mean, they would both still have winning records against Mizzou and A&M. So, to say that they can't make it in the SEC is hogwash. How would you split them? Would be the biggest thing. But somebody brought up a really interesting idea for Texas that is not really being discussed. And they said why Texas, if they want to leave the Big 12, should not go to the SEC, but become an independent.
I saw that article too.
And
it was on Yahoo.
I think that would be a bigger benefit for Texas than joining the SEC. Now, of course, people will say, well, Ben, you are a Notre Dame fan, and Notre Dame is independent. So, of course, you would be for a team that wants to go independent. But, I mean, to me, you make your schedule stronger by being an independent. And people will be like, well, how do you say that? People forget Notre Dame played in 6 big cities one season. And in 3 weeks, they were on the West Coast, East Coast, and then back to the West Coast, travel-wise. Voters take that into consideration. I mean, people will say, oh, no, they don't. Travel is a big thing among voters.
And listen, you're talking to someone in myself who has been overseas to Ireland, and it doesn't matter if it's overseas or here at home. That jet lag, that screws with you. And even when it's when you're in West Coast, East Coast, and then back to the West Coast, that jet lag is going to impact you for a day or two.
Right. So I mean, I think it would be interesting to see Texas more as an independent than jumping into the SEC.
Well, and think about it too, from both us and Texas's benefit. That could mean more games where us and them are playing.
Yeah.
So I think
for Notre Dame.
I would be excited to see what Texas could do with their schedule as an independent.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. In addition to what you were saying, people always used to, and they still do, they give us crap for scheduling quote unquote cream puffs. And like, you guys just join a conference. All you do is schedule cream puffs. Well, first off, that's not true. That's an asinine statement. And second of all, what was it, the face?
No, just the comments, because that's what people say.
Well, stupid people say that all the time. It's nothing new.
Right.
The haters always dig down deep for the lamest, most overused insult they can think of. But the second part to that is, okay, let's say we were in a conference, which obviously we were last season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even in conferences, there are cream puffs. There's the bottom of the barrel.
Yep.
So all this crap with conference, non-conference, I'm not getting into this. It doesn't make sense. What the hell does it matter if you're an independent or a conference? It really does not matter. Your schedule is full, has a balance of tough teams and mediocre teams. Unless, of course, you're in a smaller conference like the MAC or whatever, where seems always mediocre.
Right.
Not trying to discredit them, but when you compare it to other conferences, that's what I'm doing. Is like I'm comparing amongst they're
not counted as
peers.
Power 5, so they are.
Yes.
But
anyway, aside from digressing, getting back on point here. I mean, you looked up the records. Without question, Oklahoma and Texas, they would be able to hold their own in the SEC. I have no doubt about that. Yeah. Just my issue is this, and I actually got to give BVD credit for this. I can't take credit for this comment, but this seems to be a reoccurring thing happening all the time. All these schools wanting to join the SEC, because he said this on his stream the other night. He's like, oh, what, are we going to have 30 teams wanting to join the SEC next year and then 40 the year after that? Hey, if we're going to we might as well let everybody play in the SEC. Let Notre Dame, let Ohio State. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine Ohio State playing USC for the SEC championship?
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, we've gone away from the geographical.
Yeah, I get it. Geography doesn't mean squat anymore in college football. I understand that. But it's like,
yeah.
But just like, and look, I get it. All these schools they're about making money. Understandably so. The business comes with running a university. I get that. But I just think it's stupid that, these are the two premier schools of the conference, of the Big 12 conference in Oklahoma and Texas.
Yeah.
And I honestly think if they left this conference, that the Big 12 conference would they would do one of two things. You said it. You said the first one. They would either fold or they would be reduced to group of 5 status, but be a Power 5 conference.
Well, yeah. And what would most likely happen, let's just say hypothetically. Let's say hypothetically that Oklahoma and Texas take their marbles and go somewhere else. Okay. What would most likely happen is you would lose. Oklahoma State would go to another conference. They would leave and go wherever. Okay. You would lose West Virginia. West Virginia would go wherever.
I would guess to the ACC in that scenario.
Which I mean would be okay. West Virginia in the ACC, I could see West Virginia in the ACC. I mean, they have the battle for the Black Diamond against Virginia Tech, so that would be cool. And geographically, I mean, they fit that puzzle.
Right. I was just bringing that up just for a quick comment.
Right. But then the rest of the teams now that are in the Big 12, except for Iowa State, and Iowa State would probably leave and go to the Big 10. Okay. Would now be what? K-State and Kansas? Well, K-State and Kansas would dip, So now you would be just stuck with Texas teams. So then you would probably add like Texas State or El Paso or University of Texas San Antonio, UTSA, So now you become the Texas Conference because everybody that's in the conference is Texas teams, So what? I mean, where goes all that stuff? I mean, and then you're losing rivalries. I mean, we've already seen a couple rivalries be taken away because of conference changes. The border war between Mizzou and Kansas, gone. The battle between Oklahoma and Nebraska, gone. I'm trying to think of the other one that I was thinking of Big 12 wise. I mean, the list goes on and on, with these rivalries that we've lost. So, where's the end?
And just here's the thing, what doesn't make the most sense. Now, we already covered that the Sooners and the Longhorns could hold their own in the SEC, and I don't doubt that for a second. But what doesn't make sense, and I don't say this to badmouth either one of those schools, but why would you bolt the conference that you're in when the competition's already good enough? Knock on wood, but I'll get to that part in a sec. But why would you bolt the conference that you're in now to be in a conference that's even tougher and will make your path to the playoffs even more hard?
Right. Because, I mean, if Oklahoma wins the Big 12, they're a lock.
Yeah, pretty much.
We've seen it.
And, of course, we'll see in the future, too, if this 12-team playoff goes through. But that's the thing. If there's going to be 12 teams, why not just stay put? Why do you need to join another conference that's much tougher to make the playoffs? And you mentioned exposure earlier. Okay, I mean, yeah, the SEC is the premier conference in college football. There's no question about that.
Right. But see, the other issue is with exposure. Okay, the SEC is the premier conference right now. Okay, when we were kids, the SEC wasn't the premier conference. The Big Ten was.
Yes. I agree.
It was Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State, depending on the year, Iowa, depending on the year, all battling each other like we see now with Alabama and Florida and Georgia and Auburn, depending on the year, and LSU, depending on the year, So, okay, in 10 years, once Nick Saban's gone and Alabama goes back down to reality, what happens with the SEC?
Well, we don't even know if they're going to go back down to reality.
Well,
that's beside the point.
But so it goes back to the exposure thing. Okay, the premier conference right now is the SEC, sure, but will it be in the future?
Well, and even the SEC has some bottom of the barrel teams that aren't normally great.
Yeah, I mean, especially in football.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Kentucky. Ole Miss has been pretty much on the downward, for a while now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Arkansas, but, like I said, things change. I mean, 10 years ago, the Big 12 was a very good conference. I mean, Mizzou was ranked, Kansas was ranked, K-State was ranked, Oklahoma was ranked, Texas was ranked. I mean, it comes and goes in waves.
They were consistent. They were consistently good.
I mean, to what end? You're like you said, exposure. Okay, well, Oklahoma has the name. I mean, Oklahoma's a blue blood. You talk to anybody that has that much of college football knowledge, who Oklahoma is. Same with Texas. I mean, Texas, for as few national championships as Texas has, you would think they would have more because of how much people focus on them. Now, that's not a knock on Texas. It's not. But, I mean, people hold them to that blue blood, standard.
Well, just the whole state of Texas, it's football central of the United States.
So, I mean, like, what exposure do you need? I mean, if you put together a decent team, you're there.
Well, here's what I think. I mean, I don't like this idea of those two schools going to the SEC. I wish they would just stay put. And how about this? Instead of bolting for what you think is greener pastures, how about – and I guess you could definitely put this on the Big 12 commissioner. I forget who is – do you know who is the commissioner of the Big 12? Do you know?
I couldn't tell you.
I was thinking Delaney. I don't know. I'm not even going to go there. But why don't you all work – on making that conference better? But of course, this filters down, and this is just obvious, the coaching staffs of all these teams in the Big 12. Make your teams better. I mean, I've said this on numerous shows that we've done. What is that conference known for? Shootouts.
Yeah.
High-powered offenses that are extremely talented, but the defenses aren't worth a crap. I mean, how many games, how many 60 to 55 score type games have we seen? a lot in that conference. And the running joke that I've made with people is, yeah, the Big 12, when it comes to defense, they recruit the backups on the high school team, not the starters. But it's like,
Yeah.
maybe if you focus, if the coaching staffs would actually make their teams as good as they possibly can, instead of just throwing all your eggs in one basket on the offense, get consistent to where you were, 10, 15 years ago, then maybe you wouldn't have your two blue bloods of the conference ready to bolt. I mean, just make the teams better. Yeah. Make the conference better. Get the exposure in that conference better if you're the commission of the Big 12.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, what? So it's just you're going to bolt because teams aren't as good? Well, how is that your fault?
Right.
Stay in the conference, take advantage of it, which they've been doing. What are you complaining about? Right. Why are you wanting to bolt for a conference that's where it's much tougher? And I'm not calling the Big 12 weak or anything like that.
No.
They're not weak, but they are inconsistent. But I just think that also another point that I'd like to add, even with all the money that you're trying to make, the millions and millions of dollars, I get it. From a business perspective, I get it. But why can't you keep some tradition with all the money that you're making?
Yeah.
I mean, don't destroy. I mean, I'm gonna say historic, but yeah, I'll call it historic because the Big 12 has only been around since what, 96?
Yeah, because it was the Big 8 for a long time.
Yeah, because the Big 8, the leftover teams from the Big 8 and the old Southwest Conference, they merged together to form what we know as the Big 12.
Yeah,
but it's like, keep some of that tradition alive with all the money that you're making. I mean, I know I sound like I don't know what I sound like here, but I'm all about making money, but I also believe in keeping the tradition alive too. So I don't know what term would fit me there, but
traditionalist.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's fitting.
I mean, yeah, it's.
I don't want to see that conference fall apart. I want to see it get better.
Well, and people are going to be like, oh, well, like Notre Dame has ACC ties, and it's like, okay, the Notre Dame situation with the ACC is way different than what's going on with Oklahoma and Texas. Okay, the Big East folded. And Notre Dame was in the Big East for everything except football. And then they had to find another conference, and the ACC took them. And then they decided to make a pact and a deal with the ACC when it comes to scheduling in football.
Well, and just for the record, the Big East still does exist. It's just a basketball. It's just a basketball only conference.
Right. So, it's one of those where it's, things like that happen, and that's different than just teams bolting and wanting to go to a different conference, like what Nebraska did with the Big Ten, and what we've seen with the ACC losing teams and gaining teams and all that. And same with the Big 12 gaining West Virginia and TCU. I mean, TCU was on the up and up. TCU needed to get out of the Mountain West. I'll give them that. They were consistently good. They were consistently at the top. It's time to move on. And that's what happens. When you get better than the vast majority of teams, I get wanting to move on. I get that. I mean, we've seen that in, the Sun Belt with teams leaving the Sun Belt and going to Conference USA. We've seen teams jumping into the Sun Belt from a lower level, with Coastal Carolina and Liberty.
Texas State.
Texas State. Yeah. So, I mean, I get wanting to go where you're better off, but is Oklahoma and Texas better off?
Honestly, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, they're just going to get. Well, I'm not going to say lost, but they're just going to be piled in with a bunch of other teams that are just as good as them. They're not going to stand out as much as they would in the Big 12.
Right.
And maybe that sounds like people will think, Sean, you're freaking nuts by saying that. What I'm getting at is, like I said earlier, the Longhorns and the Sooners are the faces of the Big 12.
Yes.
Obviously, they're not going to be the faces of the SEC.
No, the faces of the SEC is Alabama, LSU, Kentucky, depending on the year with basketball and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we also forget that, like, look at the basketball schools and stuff. I mean, this isn't just a one school, one sport thing. This is, okay, you know, look at what's going on. Well, currently the Big 12 is the basketball conference of the country. It used to be the ACC. You know, it used to be we would see the best of the best come out of the ACC. Now it's the Big 12. You know,
and of course, you put the Big 10 in there too.
You know, so it's to what end? You know, and
well, it's just like.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, well, it's just all this realignment. Here, look at the examples where it pays off. None whatsoever. Rutgers and Maryland go into the Big 10, and maybe it's hard to look at it from outside of football perspective. Because they are pretty decent in basketball. Maryland more consistent than Rutgers. But let's face it, as far as football goes, them joining the Big 10, they're dead weight in that conference.
Right. And
the Big 10 did it to get exposure on the East Coast, get more print on the East Coast. Well, on the East Coast, the Terps and the Scarlet Knights, they're like back page of every newspaper there.
Right.
So it's like, I get the search for greener pastures. And like you just said, there's examples where it is fitting, but not in this case. Okay, Oklahoma and Texas, they're blue blood programs. They're making their money. Them going to the SEC, in my opinion, is pointless.
Yeah.
And it also kind of takes the fun out of college football. Now, I know there's some people who would love to see all these big blue blood power teams in one conference. I understand that, but and this is just my opinion. I can't speak for everybody. I can't even speak for you, Ben, but I just think that if you have them all in one conference, that takes the fun out. Because that takes the fun out of it. Because, you know, you look at all the bowl matchups, which who knows in a few years could be meaningless if they use all the NY6 bowls for the playoffs. But, you know, it was always fun to see those matchups like the Sugar Bowl,
yes,
which is always SEC versus Big 12, or the Rose Bowl, Big 10 versus Pac-12, and things like that. You know, it's awesome because those are those matchups that you anticipate, whether in the regular season or a bowl game or playoffs, vice versa.
Yeah. Well, and then, like, you know, when you do have that rare year where it's not a bowl game and it's a regular season, it ups the stakes even more. I mean, this year we have Penn State and Oregon. You know, that's a big one. This year, Nebraska and Oklahoma meet up for the first time since Nebraska left the Big 12. That's going to be huge. You know, so, I mean, just as giving two examples. So we get excited. I mean, and we do it every year. Every year we have a couple marquee matchups that are big name programs that haven't met up in a while meet up, you know, and we get excited.
Like us in Wisconsin this year.
Yeah.
We haven't played them since the 60s.
Yeah. I mean, you know, so, you know, it's that you lose that when you have this whole super conferences.
That's exactly my point.
The crazy thing is it's not just in football that we're seeing this. I mean, we've seen this across the pond in England and whatnot. They're wanting, you know, they wanted to do this super conference where, you know, it was Manchester United and Manchester City and Liverpool and AC Milan.
Yeah, merge the Premier League with some other league. I forget.
You know,
I don't follow soccer.
So you just have these marquee matchups constantly, and there's no dead weight. But see, the issue is, and this is another thing that people tend to forget, and I know people are stingy and people, you know, whatever. People complain about Alabama playing cupcakes, you know, and people complain about Notre Dame playing cupcakes, and people complain about Ohio State. You know, Ohio State for years played some Ohio team from the MAC, whether it was Miami of Ohio, University of Ohio, Akron, whoever, and then they'd beat the crap out of them. Okay, but the one thing that people forget, okay, is these matchups with these smaller teams, these cupcakes, makes that team better. Okay, people forget where Cincinnati is now is because of what Ohio State did 15 years ago. Because Ohio State played them consistently every year. Okay, well, then all of a sudden you can go off of, oh, well, we're recruiting you, and guess what? Okay, next year we're playing Ohio State, and we're playing them in Cincinnati, or we're playing them in Columbus. And same with like Alabama and stuff. Alabama gets Kent State on the schedule, and those guys are like, oh man, we get to play Alabama. We get exposure. We get to see, these scouts come and look at us. Okay, well, you get rid of all of that for these littler teams that create these opportunities for these kids when you create a super conference.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly
my point.
And people are like, well, but go to the NFL level. Okay, you wouldn't have your Jason Taylors of the world. You wouldn't have Brian Urlacher of the world. You wouldn't have Terry Bradshaw. You wouldn't the list goes on from guys that came from small schools that got an opportunity because a bigger name school came along and played them. And then guys scout-wise are like, that Brian Urlacher for New Mexico, he's pretty good. That Jason Taylor for Akron, he's pretty good. Terry Bradshaw at Louisiana Tech, wow, what an arm. So, you lose all that. That all goes away with a super conference. So do you really want to do that?
No, I don't. I wouldn't want to do it, and I really think everybody else should feel the same way. All these reasons that you just mentioned about all that lost opportunity and the lack of tradition, it just, put it this way, if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's my thought on this. I don't like the idea of the Sooners.
You made the best point, Sean. You made the absolute best point. The best point is that if we're going to expand the playoffs, then what's the point of moving? Because if you're in the Power Five, you're where you need to be. Okay? If you win your conference, you're in. Okay? And heck, we might even see where you come in second, you can still make it in.
Exactly.
So what's the issue here? You're going to get to play against Alabama. You're going to get to play against Georgia, or you're going to get to play against whoever it is that's coming out of the SEC or the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the Pac-12. So whether that's Southern Cal or Oregon or Ohio State or Michigan, whoever, you're going to get that opportunity if you're good enough.
The bottom line is this would be a stupid move on the Longhorns and the Sooners' part if they do this. And the only time I think expansion really should happen is like the examples you gave. The smaller school who is bigger than their conference, like we're talking in the group of five or even Division I AA.
Right, the jump.
Or I get just Division I now. That needs the better competition. Or like what we saw already. Group of five moving to the Power Five, or Division I moving to the FBS. That's what I think expansion should be. Yeah. And at this time, Ben, we need to have our commercial break from our sponsor.
From the land of sky blue waters, from the land of pine's lofty blossoms, from the beer refreshing.
Pour an ice-cold Hams and treat yourself to the premium beer from the land of sky blue waters. Great-tasting Hams.
Hams, the beer refreshing. Hams, the beer refreshing. Hams.
Okay, that was me giving a shout-out to my dad because that was his beer growing up. The small town that he grew up in. The two main beers of choice that you would see in everybody's refrigerators, Hams and Miller High Life. Those were the two beers of Cambridge, Illinois. But anyway, Ben, I didn't mean to just cut you off. Was there anything else you wanted to add to Oklahoma and Texas possibly bolting?
No, not at all.
All right. Well, on to our next topic, and this really isn't much because it's kind of a song and dance that we've heard several times before. But just recently, ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips, he just came out and said that he really wants Notre Dame to join the ACC as a full-time member, which means them being a part of the ACC conference. Now, how far could we really go with this? I mean, it's a song. Like I said, it's a song and dance we've heard many times before.
Yeah.
Anybody who knows us knows that we love our independence, And yeah, I mean, yeah, last year was fun. Don't get me wrong. It was fun to get a trial run to see what, playing in the ACC would look like. And I have nothing against the ACC. I mean, that's because of them. We have only 7 games to fill instead of 5, or instead of 12, I mean. So it was fun, yes, but I like being an independent more than being in a conference in the ACC.
Well, yeah, and Notre Dame's in that unique situation where, historically they go against Southern Cal, they go against Michigan, they go against Michigan State, they go against Purdue, they go against Navy. The list goes on and on and on. Okay, you can't do that if you're in the ACC or if you're in a conference in general.
Yeah.
So it's okay. Do you want it this way or do you want it that way? Because you can't have both. You can only have it one way, and the one way is either independent and you have all those opportunities, or you go into a conference and then you only have Florida State, Miami, Boston College, Pitt. Clemson's kind of sneaking up a little bit now. In recent years, we've kind of developed a little bit of a rivalry with Clemson. But you lose the opportunities.
We're talking about the long-time traditions that the long-time rivalries that we played.
Stanford, that is USC, that is Purdue, on and on and on and on. So, and it benefits the ACC more than it benefits Notre Dame.
It does.
I mean, I'll be the first to say that, and people can be like, "Well, you're looking at it from a selfish point of view," but it does. I mean, the ACC gains a lot more than Notre Dame does.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's true.
Football-wise. Basketball, baseball, soccer, badminton, whatever, fencing, no. But football-wise, yes. They gain a lot more than Notre Dame would.
Well, you kind of indirectly said it, but that's basically what the ACC is gunning for is football. We're already a member school for all the other sports.
Yeah.
Well, with the exception of hockey, but hockey, that's set up.
Hockey ain't in the South.
Hockey. Well, the hockey format in college is those conferences are set up different than the normal conferences.
Yes.
But yeah, that's really what the ACC is wanting is football to complete everything. And like we pointed out, I mean, we'd lose a lot if we joined because. Let's see. I forget the ACC. They play 9 conference games or 8.
Let's look.
Well, it doesn't matter. Let's just say they play 9 for the sake of argument. Let's just say they play 9. Okay. What rivalries would we keep? We'd want to keep USC. Probably want to keep Navy. So that leaves one spot left to. Okay, who do we pick of the remaining rivalries that we have?
They play 8.
8? Okay. So we would have the chance to keep 4 rivalry games, but I don't think they'd want to keep all 4. They'd probably want to schedule an SEC team in there, maybe a Big Ten, So
yeah.
My point is, as an independent, we don't have to really worry about that right now. We're not really hamstringed by,
the world is Notre Dame's oyster when it comes to scheduling.
Yeah, I mean, the only hamstring, and I wouldn't even call this a hamstring, are the 5 ACC schools. Right. And I don't mean that the way it sounds.
Yeah,
because us working with this agreement with them has really helped make the schedule easier to manage. Leaves us 7 slots to keep open, so we can make our schedule more diverse, schedule an SEC, schedule Big Ten, or whoever.
Yes.
Well, we lose that if we join a conference.
And you lose the uniqueness that is Notre Dame. Because a few seasons ago, Notre Dame played at least one team from all Power 5 conferences. So that's Big 12, SEC, Pac-12, Big 10, ACC.
Yeah.
How many teams can say that?
Not many. Not many at all.
So, I mean, and that presents a whole different kind of challenge. I mean, us in Notre Dame country tend to take the route, well, you play in conference, so you play in your backyard constantly. if you're in the Big Ten, you're constantly in the North, and if you're in the SEC, then you're constantly in the South, and you never really leave.
I think what eventually is going to boil down to is if the 12-team playoff becomes finalized, and that's what they're going to do for the postseason for the national championship. I guess it just depends, really. And I said this in a prior video that we did. It just depends how much Notre Dame is going to want to be a top 4 seed and get that first round bye.
Yeah, and it also depends on if they actually go with the seeding process that they said they would.
That's true too. That's true, because that can always change.
Will they force Notre Dame's hand in saying, okay, well, you can't be anything better than the 6th seed, so if you want to be better, then you got to join a conference.
Well, it'd be 5, but still.
So, it's and that in and of itself is a different topic for a different day, but that will make a big impact too. So, yeah, I think that it's a constant push for Notre Dame to join a conference. We hear it every year. Us Notre Dame fans hear it. We roll our eyes. We show that. We showed it last year. Last year, our schedule went from X amount of hardness to X amount of easiness by joining the ACC. And the haters hated that fact. Hated it. Absolutely hated it. And then Notre Dame makes the conference championship.
Things didn't go our way, but we still made it.
So,
So don't tell me that we can't handle being in a conference, because we proved last year that we can.
Yeah. And everybody on Notre Dame's schedule except for one they beat.
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, they had Notre Dame at 2 losses. Yeah, but they beat Clemson once during the season.
But, of course, you know what the people are going to say about that? Oh, Lawrence wasn't there, and this guy wasn't there, that guy wasn't there. No, we just faced a freshman quarterback that put up better numbers than Trevor Lawrence. So,
yeah.
But,
yeah. So, it's what do you want? And like I said, you can't have it both ways.
Look, here, the bottom line is this. I'll always, as a fan, I'll always be grateful to the ACC for not just the scheduling arrangement. I'll be always grateful to them for what they did for us and being able to play last year in general and let us join the conference for that 1 year. I'm always going to be grateful for that. But things are pretty much back to normal now for the most part. We don't need to do that. Right. We don't need to join full time. It's just, like you said, it's going to be whether our hand is forced and how the playoffs work. And it just depends on what they do with the playoffs and when they finalize that and what exactly the seating arrangement is. So, but that's a ways down the road yet. So I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. But at this point in time, no, we don't need to be in the ACC as a full-time member. So yeah, Ben, anything else that you would like to add to this episode?
I got nothing, man. It's getting another day closer to college football season. It's getting exciting. It's becoming real. Yeah,
I cannot wait till the day before Labor Day. It's getting close, baby. I can't wait. So, but yeah, with that, everyone, this is a good place to wrap it up. I am ND Sean 45.
I'm Irish Benjamin 57.
And as always, as we always say, God bless, good night, and go Irish.
Go Irish.